Thanks so much to Aquasana for sponsoring this video. I am really excited because today we're going to do another video in my little series I have going of what I like to cook when I feel like eating out. I know we all have those days where even though we want to eat out, we're gonna eat at home, either because it's just more economical or you already have stuff in the fridge that you don't want to go to waste. I always have salads prepped in the fridge, so when I need a satisfying lunch or dinner, I love taking just a classic and doing soup and salad, which I know is very basic, but I love taking those things and making them more inspiring and just different flavors, things that you wouldn't be able to get out, and just kind of switching things up. And let's be real, I really can't be spending $15 on that out for one bowl of soup and a salad when I could spend $15 at the grocery store and get enough to feed my entire family. There's 6 of us and I can feed us all in a really delicious and healthy way at home. Pull out those pantry staples and let's make something delicious. So I have a lot of salads that I love making that are on my website, so I make a lot of those all the time on repeat. But what I don't have as many of is just soups, especially for this time of year when it's kind of not really winter anymore, it's more spring, but I still want something warm and delicious and just kind of hearty. I love soups any time of year, so I've been trying to experiment and make different kind of soups that are just a little bit different than our typical like standbys. So we're gonna do that today. You've never had it before, I'm sure. So I've got a lot of spinach that's gonna go into this, and then I just have some really basic items here. I've got a red onion I'm gonna use, some carrots and celery, and then some pantry staples and standbys. I've got some fire roasted diced tomatoes. I love those because they have amazing flavor. They're just so good and add a little bit something extra without much effort. And then I'm also using some green enchilada sauce. This is from Siete and I love theirs. It's got really clean ingredients, but what you could do if you don't have this is you could make it yourself, of course, if you have tomatillos and all those sorts of things. But what you can do is use a jar of salsa verde. So you could use green enchilada sauce or salsa verde in this, and it is going to be a delicious, cozy soup for just a weeknight dinner when you're feeling like eating out. Maybe you're craving something with a little bit more Tex-Mex flavor or an Italian soup even, because we're going to add a little spin to this soup and add an ingredient that's really unexpected. There's also a substitute for it, so it's super versatile, but I think it's going to be delicious. And I think we're going to call this one Gnocchi Minestrone Verde. Italian style soups are always so satisfying, and so I thought, well, why not take a typical kind of gnocchi soup and put a little bit more greens in there, and the tomatillo salsa or green enchilada sauce, whichever one you end up using, those flavors in there just really make a beautiful soup base. So I'm going to start by getting all my veggies prepped first, and then we'll move over to the stove. I'm going to start by peeling my carrots, but you don't even have to peel them if you don't want. You could leave all that fiber intact. Just make sure that you scrub them down really, really well, and hopefully they're organic too. That's always good if you're going to keep the skin on, but I'm going to go ahead and just peel off some of the skin so it's nice and tender, and then I'll take that and just dice these up. You could slice them too, but I like to just make sure that they're a nice bite size so we can get some in every bite. Then I'm going to do the same thing with celery, but I like to make the celery just a little bit smaller than the carrots. So I'll slice those down long ways and then cut them crossways. I love making different kinds of soups like this because not only can I use my pantry staples up that usually just sit there and I need to find a way to use them up, but I also have veggies in my fridge. I always have celery and carrots and onion, so finding easy ways to use those even during the weekdays when things are a little bit busier comes in handy. And this is a really easy meal, but it tastes like something you would get out to eat, but it's so much healthier. And I know for my family, we love to be able to eat out, but it is challenging finding something that's really worth it. Either it's super expensive and overpriced, or it's full of ingredients that just aren't the best, and you can definitely taste that. So I like to find the things that we like to eat out. So if it's some sort of Italian soup or something really cozy, I like to try to figure out ways to make that at home. And sometimes it's not even kind of making that recipe healthier, it's just making it at home with the real
real ingredients, and it naturally is so much healthier. So now I'm just dicing up a red onion, but you could definitely substitute a white onion. It'll be just fine in this soup, but I love using red onion anytime I'm using a more Tex-Mex style flavor, whether it's a salsa or an enchilada sauce. I think red onion just really goes well with that. I'm going to grab a bowl because when I have so many vegetables going on this side of the kitchen, I know that when I try to take my knife or even a dough scraper to pull my veggies up and move them over to the stove, I end up spilling them all over the floor. So I really need to start utilizing bowls more often. And this soup has so many different veggies in it that I really need a bowl to take it over to the stove. So I have all of my garlic here. I think I used about 3 or 4 cloves, and I'm just going to mince that up. It doesn't have to be perfectly minced though, because it's going to melt into that soup and you'll barely know that it's there, even if it's a little chunky. Then I'm also taking a ton of baby spinach, and this also plays into that Verde style soup, green, and I'm using about 3 to 4 ounces of spinach. This is about 1 box size at the grocery store, the smaller box, and I'm going to cut that up a little bit because I like it when the spinach is nice and bite size and we don't have big pieces we kind of have to chew through. So I just run my knife through that really coarsely and make sure it's really well rinsed too, and then we'll take that over to the stove and we'll add that later after we get all those sauteed veggies really cooked down and nice and soft. Then we'll throw in spinach.
Having clean filtered water in my home is a non-negotiable, and my family uses the clean water machine from Aquasana. I love it because it's a filtration system that provides the maximum contaminant reduction while leaving beneficial minerals in the water. So all of the potassium, magnesium, and calcium is still in our drinking water, and the filter lasts 7.5 times longer than the leading pitcher. With environmental toxins on the rise and all the things found in our water sources, filtering your water is something we all need to be thinking about. So all you have to do is put the canister here full of water, filter that you'll slide in, so you'll turn it, and once you turn it you can pop open the filter, and then this is the replaceable part. Then you just put the lid back on and your filter is ready to go for the longest time. This is really easy. My kids can even fill it up, and you just press the button here and it comes out so quickly in 8 seconds. So here's my very typical freezer burnt tasting fridge water. Not my favorite. This is my water bottle full of Aquasana water. The taste is so much smoother and crisp, and there's not like that little bitter aftertaste. So start drinking cleaner, healthier water. You can scan the QR code here on screen, or you can go to the description box, click my link, and they're gonna give you 55% off all of Aquasana's systems that are $49 and up, plus you'll get free shipping. So it's the perfect time to start drinking better water. Thanks so much to Aquasana for sponsoring today's video.
So to make this soup really flavorful, not only am I using the fire roasted diced tomatoes, but I'm also using a can of my little green chilies. These are mild, but they do have heat to them. So if you just want a little bit of heat, I would say use about half a can. But if you like a good bit of spice, go ahead and put the full can of this in, and it gives it a nice kick that's not super overpowering. It just has good flavor. Now I'm also using some gnocchi. You can use regular gnocchi, you can use a gluten-free gnocchi, or if you don't want to use any gnocchi at all, you can substitute it for white beans, and the texture of the soup is still kind of similar, but you're not having any sort of gluten or wheat, and there's going to be so much fiber in there too from the beans, so you could do that as well. But I just think the texture of the gnocchi is just so comforting and cozy, and they cook up in just a couple of minutes too, so it's really fast, faster than boiling pasta on a weeknight, and you can put it straight into the soup. Now, I want to add that protein and fiber too, so I'm going to go ahead and use a can of beans, but if I didn't want to use gnocchi, then you can just double up or triple up on the can of beans. Beans and just plant-based proteins in general, I've been really using a lot of lately since we're still in Lent. And I was reading from the Blue Zone diets and kind of doing some research about them. And so many of the people who live such healthy lives eat beans every single day as part of their normal diet. And it's packed with so much fiber that really feeds your gut. So I love incorporating those. They're super economical. So I sauteed my veggies down, they're nice and soft, and now I'm just adding in my tomatoes, I'm adding in that can of diced chilies, the enchilada sauce or salsa verde, whichever one you're using, you can use either, and then I added in those drained and rinsed beans, and I'm just mixing them all together. You can already see this beautiful texture. This is what I love right here. I love plants and fiber and protein. It's just such pure and wholesome food. This is beneficial to so many of us. I know we all have different health concerns, but this is like the real deal food that comes from the earth, and I just love it so much. It makes me happy just to see it in my pot. So now I'm adding in some vegetable broth. You can add 3.5 cups. You can kind of eyeball it and make the consistency you want, but just make sure that you have enough because we're going to add in that gnocchi and it will absorb some of that liquid. So I like to get it simmering for a few minutes first, and then I seasoned it with garlic and salt. You don't need too much salt because the veggie broth will already have salt in it, so just salt it to taste. And then I will add in that gnocchi right when it comes to a simmer. Just let it simmer for 3 to 4 minutes, I think, until that gnocchi is cooked, and then it's ready to go. But right at the end is when I throw in my spinach. So it just kind of wilts down a little bit. It's still going to be vibrant and green, which is what you want. This soup is the perfect kind of cross between a Tex-Mex soup with the salsa verde and an Italian soup with the gnocchi. It is two of my favorite worlds combined in a soup pot, and it is so amazing. You could top this with a little bit of cheese too. That's kind of like my secret for getting my kids to eat soups is anything with a little bit of fresh Parmesan cheese or sharp cheddar cheese is going to be delicious on top of a soup like this that's full of broth. It kind of makes the broth a little bit creamier. But honestly, this soup has such a good broth because of that salsa verde and the diced chilies that you really don't even need cheese. But I'm going to sprinkle a little bit of Parmesan on top, grate that right over the top, and just give it that nice cheesy feel. I like to use the real Parmesan. This is from Italy, and you want to use real cheese that's not full of little secret ingredients that is basically plastic cheese. So make sure you check your cheese and make sure it's the real stuff. It's going to be a lot easier on your gut too. Not only is this soup delicious the day of, you can throw a little bit of sourdough crusty bread on the side and it would be amazing, but it is also good put in a jar for the next couple of days without even having to meal prep, and these leftovers just get better and better with time. So I'm a huge fan of having something in the fridge, label it so you know exactly what it is, and get that leftovers eaten up. You'll feel so good. The next meal we're going to make almost has a similar flair to it because this particular week I was just craving these kinds of foods. It was one of those cooler spring weeks, and of course I'm still trying to get lots of beans in our diet because it's plant-based protein, which is so important for me and for the kids right now. So while we're not eating meat, I'm getting in tons of beans, and honestly I feel really good. I think if your gut can handle it, then go for it, and it is so economical. So I'm really enjoying using up all the beans that have been sitting in my pantry for a couple of months. So I'm starting on a soup that could also be more of a casserole. So depending on what your family likes, maybe you have a husband who doesn't really love soup, then you can make this thicker and make it like a casserole. And it is so delicious. So it's basically rice and beans, but it's kind of like an enchilada style soup. So I'm starting by getting a sweet onion sliced up. You could dice it too, but sometimes I like to play around with the cut of the veggies. So I sliced up some sweet onion, and I'm slicing up one poblano too, and then I'll turn it the other way and dice it really finely. And I love poblanos. They're usually not too spicy. They're kind of a more mild pepper, but just have a little bit more to them than a bell pepper. But you could definitely sub a green bell pepper here if that's what you have in your fridge. Go ahead, please use it. So I'm going to put a little bit of avocado here in my pot and get those two things sauteing down. Once I get my veggies sauteed and start to turn translucent and nice and soft, that is the ideal time that I like to add in my seasonings so that they can kind of absorb the oil and toast just a little bit. I feel like it gives it deeper flavor. So I'm doing a mixture of garlic powder, some paprika, and some cumin. And then I'm also going to be adding some red enchilada sauce, which is actually really delicious homemade, but I happen to have this jar in my pantry, and so I wanted to go ahead and use that up. We're kind of doing like a pantry clean out, I guess you could say. But I made my homemade enchilada sauce a couple weeks ago and it was so delicious. It's basically just kind of like spices and tomato paste and broth, so you can make that really easily if you don't have a jar of it, but I'm going to use up my jar because I need to clean out my pantry. So I'm sauteing those spices, getting them nice and toasted, and you can see the beautiful color we have on the onion already because of those delicious spices. And then from here, I'm going to be adding in a jar of red enchilada sauce, and this is another amazing soup base. It's kind of like a hack to give you deep richness besides just tomato sauce. So I'm adding in that. I'm adding in another can of fire roasted diced tomatoes. This is just such a staple, and I love the texture. And if you like a smaller tomato, they also make them in a petite size, which is really delicious. Then I'm adding in a can of pinto beans and black beans that have been drained and rinsed, and then some frozen corn. And that is a delicious combination right here. You could kind of just turn this into a casserole, but I'm gonna add in some veggie broth, and that's just gonna make it a lot more soupy. And as it kind of cooks down and simmers, you'll lose some of that liquid. So at this point, it's almost like a chili too, but with enchilada sauce. Really yummy. But I'm squeezing in the juice of a lime. Sometimes limes are so hard, so if you warm them up a little bit, you could put them in the Breville oven on warm and just heat them for a few minutes. It makes them a lot easier to juice. So I'm adding in that fresh lime, and I think it's really helpful because when you have canned things, sometimes you need a little brightness, a little bit of zestiness to bring it to life, and so that's what the lime juice does here. Then I'm adding in a cup of rice that I had in the fridge. This is actually cilantro lime, but you could use plain white rice, plain brown rice, and we're gonna add in that rice. So it's rice and beans, enchilada sauce, all those delicious flavors that we love in our Tex-Mex or Mexican food. It's really good. And you wanna make sure you add in that rice right at the end. That way you don't overcook it. Now, in order to make this really kid-friendly and something my kids will devour, I'm adding in some sharp white cheddar cheese that I just grated up fresh. But honestly, I like the soup better without the cheese in it. But my kids love the cheese in it because it makes it more like a cheesy enchilada soup. But honestly, I think I like it more of a brothy base. So that's kind of up to you whether you want to use cheese or not. But either way, you can't go wrong. It is really, really tasty. My husband in particular is a huge fan of this soup because it's nice and hearty and it just has a really great flavor too. I like to finish it off with a little extra squeeze of lime juice. You could do a little bit of sour cream or some organic tortilla chips to add some crunch to it, and it's almost like a dip or like a casserole depending on how much broth you put in. But it is so good and so hearty, and you can pull it together really quickly on a weeknight. So this is amazing when you need something to cook when you feel like eating out. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Don't forget you can go to healthyelizabeth.com for the recipes and follow me over on Instagram because I have even more content over there. Thanks so much for joining me in the kitchen.